Hi, welcome back to Cafe Racer Kits. This video we're going to strip this bike down, get it all apart so we're ready to begin on converting it into a cafe race. Now there won't be time in this video to do a complete workshop manual strip down, but what I suggest you do is you get yourself a Haynes manual and just follow the instructions in that. But what I will show you is the sequence by which I take all the bits apart. So the first thing is going to be seat off, tank off, get the exhaust system off, and just start stripping away all the bits on the outside. Pretty easy to take apart. Most of them come off with clips or one or two nuts and bolts. Okay, here's the bike with the tank and seat off. So now we can see where everything's laid out. So under the tank, look, you've got the ignition coils are here. These are the rubbers that hold the tank on. Coming back, this is the seat support that we're going to use as part of the kit. The air filter's down in here, which for our purposes is all going to be removed. This is the big seat brace that we're going to be taking off, so we can put a neater seat on there from the kit. And at the back here you've got all the electrical wiring for the rear light. We're going to reuse some of this part, but we'll chop that down to make it fit okay. Coming back round, battery is down here, and all the rectifier, regulator, etc. We're going to be reusing all of that sort of stuff. There's a set of rear engine mounts here, and the front engine mounts connect on there. So a bit later on in this video we'll get to the point where we drop the engine out. I've removed the front mud guard, I needed that to use for my instructions. And next thing is we'll have a go at getting all the controls and the speedo, tacho, etc. off. Right, moved on a bit. I've now got the front controls off with just the loom, as you can see, it's just hanging out the front there. I've taken the exhaust off, I've taken the rear brake lever off. You can see over here that the front binnacle comes off in one piece. There's a lot of fiddling about. You have to undo all of the wiring loom connections inside, etc. But it does all come apart, and we'll put that to one side because obviously we're going to need some parts from that. There's Bella the dog, come to help us. So next thing is we'll have a go at this rear light assembly, which is another part we're going to need to put to one side for later. Okay, I've taken off the rear mudguard and the rear light assembly. Again, that unit comes off in one piece and needs to be put away, and we'll do a bit with that later on. So the next thing I think is to get all the control cables off that we can, and then we can think about removing the wiring loom. So we've just got the basic sort of frame and engine wheels left. I've now taken the brakes off, the splitter for the brakes, the cables to the throttle and the clutch, and the handlebar switches. The loom is still here hanging out, so we're getting closer to removing that. The next thing, in order to be able to do it, is to start disconnecting all the connections down here that connect onto the solenoid valve, the regulator, etc. And then we're nearly there, and we can take it off. I've taken the loom off now, so that's most of the electrics off the bike. All of this bit down here all came off in one go. There's a number of connectors that you just have to separate to get the loom off. And the good news for me is that the loom looks in really good nick. here it is. I've laid it out on the floor. So this is the bit up by the headlamp that all the connectors have to be put back into. Then you've got this long bit here that goes under the tank. Eventually it comes out under the seat. You've got some connectors here which I believe are for the rear brake light switch. Then it goes off down to there. And there you've got the solenoid for the starter motor and some connectors to the regulator, etc. And then this leg here, and I'll find it in the screen. These are all the rear light connectors. So there you go, it's all in one go. There is another bit of the loom which we can go and have a look at, which are the connectors here, and this is all connected to the engine, so we'll get to that bit a little bit later. But that's pretty well, all the electrics are now stripped off the bike. The last thing on the electrical side at this point is up here. I just want to get the fuses off, but they only come off when you take the handlebars off. So getting there. Right, I've removed the handlebars and I've taken all the rubber breather pipes off that I can, which has resulted in a bit of water coming out from the overflow on the catcher bottle. I've taken out the air filter, separated the air filter here, the carb stubs, but what you'll find is that you won't be able to get the box out really. It's much easier to do that once the engine's out of the way. Taken all the brakes off earlier, stripped some bits off the radiator. I've removed the brake spindle which runs through the back of the frame down here, just to get that out of the way. I've taken the brake light switch off. So the next thing to do is to get the bike supported by the engine rather than the main stand. So what I'm going to do is to put some blocks down, lift the thing up and get it so that it's sitting on the engine and the wheels are being supported by the frame. Okay, I've put some concrete blocks under there, under the motor. Look, you can see that it sits down on those little pads there quite happily. But I've taken the back wheel out, but the bike's still a little bit wibbly wobbly. So the next thing to do is to whip the bevel box off to take a bit more weight off the back before stripping the forks and the front wheel out. Otherwise the whole thing's going to tip backwards. That's the bevel box off. All looks quite clean down in here. It's just held on by these 3 nuts and studs, and of course the shock absorber as well. So that comes off. There's no need to drain it at this stage. You can do that later. So now the bike's sitting a bit more firmly, still a little bit wobbly, but I think she'll be alright. So the next thing is to try taking the front wheel out, see how it balances. Well, there we are. I've taken the front wheel off and I've dropped the fork legs out, and the bike is now balancing on the engine, but it's also just resting down here on the main stand at the bottom. So that's okay, that's fine. And then we're nearly now at the point where we want to take the frame off. Before finally removing the frame, one last thing to do is down here is to make sure you undo the pinch bolt that holds the shaft onto the output shaft. You can find out about that in the Haynes manual. So, the frame is held to the engine by the bolts down here at the rear engine mounts. The auxiliary mount, which is up here, this is not actually fitted to all models, so if you don't have one of these, don't worry too much about that. And also here at the front engine mount. So just take all the bolts out and then should be ready to come off. There you go, that's the frame has been removed off the engine. So now I've got that over here separately. The engine can be put away. We'll deal with that in a separate video a little bit later. And for the frame, there's just a couple of last things to do. I'd like to take the swinging arm off and take the centre stand off, and then get the airbox out. Also remove the fork yokes from the front end, and then we've got the bike pretty much stripped down. I've taken the fork yokes out, and I'll flip the frame upside down because I want to take the stand off. Got the swinging arm out already, and also if you look down here underneath this plate, it's held on by 3 M6 bolts, and it's really nice if you can get those out without stripping the heads off and reclaim those threads. The centre stand is just held on with this pinch arrangement and a split pin, so that should come out quite easily. Well, that's about it for the strip down now. I think we're all done. There's the frame, swinging arm out, everything's stripped off, so that's ready to be looked at for the conversion. Here's the engine. Nice little unit, it's all sat on its own, and this is one of the things I really like about the CX. The little engine unit's a proper little separate part of the bike. You could actually start that up and it would sit and run on its own now. It doesn't need a battery to run, only to start. So that will be the subject of another video a bit later on. Then over here we've got the bits that we've kept. There's our wheels, front binnacle, which again we'll look at later, and the tank, rear light. Here's all the fixings and rubbery bits and all that sort of stuff. The wiring loom and all the controls, and all the sort of bigger lumps waiting to look at. Got the bevel box down here, front discs which we'll need to measure up, make sure they're going to be okay. And then finally, if we look over here, here's a heap and all the rubbish that I can now take up a dump and get rid of. And this is why doing this conversion is going to save you a bit of weight on your bike.